Hello. Welcome to episode 29 of Illusions Exist. The Pyrrho Show, everybody. Obviously, it's a show. Episode 29, Willpower. I've talked about it before, but never on the Illusions Exist show. We talked about it on the Illusions Exist Hangout, but that was a different entity. This is the Illusions Exist show, episode 29, Willpower. Now, willpower is about how to make decisions. A lot of people get all obsessed about it being about other things, but it's about decision making. Does decision making exist? Yes. Now, I would like to point out that basically it's a truism in psychological matters, or in the psychological matters that relate to your psychological understanding of the physical world. That, what you see is what you get, right? So what you see is the real thing that you have to deal with. I mean, for example, the color red or blue or green or any color, you see, a little blue dot. I can tell you what that is because if you have the power of vision, then you know what a blue dot is, right? And we know that's a fundamentally elusive thing. That is, that it is an illusion. And even though we figured out what's really going on, right? We think the sky is blue, but we're looking out into space. It's not space. The thing isn't blue and stuff. We know that what's happened is a blue photon from whichever of the ways that the blue photon can bounce off of everything or be emitted and hit our eye. And we have detectors in our eye that take this little photon, which is a spark, and register, there was one of those things. And furthermore, it's delicate enough to tell between different types of these sparks. And so you have your red and your blue and your whatnot. And it's a little phenomena, but we have a detector that turns it into information. And so when we see a blue dot, that blue, we know we've invented that, right? And we figured out other animals don't have red, green, and blue. They have, different colors and yellow and browns or whatever. And who knows what they look like inside, but they don't even have the same number. We can tell they don't have the same discrimination. We can look at their eye, the neurology in their eyes and see what they're capable of detecting in terms of photons. How sharp their abilities are in one wavelength versus another. So the point is, though, that you're dealing with the blue dot. The fact that it's elusive, that it's an illusion, that the real thing is a photon, whatever that is, with all its physical characteristics. You're dealing with the information that's generated by your measuring device, right? Your built-in measuring device. So, for example, also hunger. I mean, look, hunger, there's a lot of different kinds or flavors of hunger, right? But God only knows what it relates to in terms of that photon kind of relationship. It's like you're lacking calories, your blood sugar's low, I'm not even sure. That feeling that you get when if you're holding your breath like underwater and you can't get a breath. The interesting thing about that is I found out that feeling is actually detecting that you're not getting rid of carbon dioxide. Right? So if you were to breathe in a pure nitrogen environment, you're getting no oxygen, you don't feel out of breath at all. In fact, people that work around nitrogen, if there's a nitrogen gas leak, you can easily pass out and die. It's actually one of the most humane ways to do euthanasia, because that feeling that I don't even know what to call it. It's like a kind of a choking where you're can't get air when you're holding your breath, it's actually because there's too much of a buildup of carbon dioxide. It's just kind of funny. So the point is, you're dealing with that feeling of being out of breath. It doesn't feel like I got to get gas out of my lungs. It feels like I need oxygen, right? And so all of the feelings are kind of elusive like that, sound, everything. And yet, it also is what it seems like to you when it comes to making choices. That's the name of the phenomenon that we're going through with willpower, is learn how to make a choice. Learn how to walk. Get a stroke and have to learn how to walk again. Could have swore I had a pen. I was spinning. So you have to deal with the phenomena as it is. Now, as I deal with this phenomena, I think it's one thing to talk about macroscopic animals. They're really not important. Everything important goes on in cells, and we're made of cells, so we might as well try to figure out what's going on with the cells. Now, this is a motor protein, kinesin, I think, pulling a vesicle along a microtubule inside a cell. Now, this thing is able to... so how is this thing able to do this coordinated animal-like movement? This is a kind of a movement. And the thing is, these can turn around and go in the other direction. They require a lot of coordination. By themselves, this thing here is this is a protein. It's holding on to this big vesicle. This is the little protein here, right? And basically, proteins are all little machines, right? They're the things that inside the cell are behaving like the little creatures that walk and stuff, and with a purpose. They take something to a particular location. But even just swinging those legs around, now obviously a robot can be programmed to do that. This little protein is much like a marionette, just a rag doll, right? And the question is, I don't see where the strings are. Now, I would presume, I will tell you my belief, I don't think the protein is doing the controlling of itself. I do think it's a marionette. We know that because the strings, so to speak, that cause this motion it's hydrolysis, which is water that has to be organized a certain way. The water molecules must be organized in a certain way. And water molecules can inject electrons, releasing energy from the ATP. And, I by no means was ever much of a chemist or anything, but I've been reading up on this over the years, So I might get something wrong or whatever. Please correct me if I get one of these things wrong or you disagree. But don't just say, "Oh, you're wrong." Say what you think it is. But anyway, so this is a rag doll. The strings are kinds of hydrolysis, mostly in this, injecting electrons from particular arrangements of water molecules can inject the electrons. I mean, it really turns out that's why water is so important. It can both give protons or hydrogen atoms into systems, and it can take part in acidic kinds of reactions, and it can inject the electrons. And so the injection of these electrons and binding of the ATP into this proton has to be triggered just right to make it do these kind of walking motions. And so the strings go off into the water, and the question is, where's the other end of the strings? I mean, it's like these are like wires, like in our bodies, also a ragdoll marionette. We know how it gets moved around. It's from the muscles. Yeah, but how do the muscles, or how are they controlled? Well, we know that's from these, wires of the neurons that go back to the, big controlling unit, the big, wired up information processing unit. In this case, it's not really, nobody knows where the other side of the wires are. It's not really obvious there is another side of the wire. I'm thinking at the moment that what happens is the hydrophilic and hydrophobic points on the proteins organize the water molecules into little teeny tiny computing devices, and those computing devices are what's doing the controlling to make this thing do its robotic walks. And I mean, there are just so many. You should try searching this. It's like they have some really great ones, and they're not all 100% reliable, but they have gotten really good, way better than when I was a kid. Or when I was a kid, they'd be saying you couldn't visualize this stuff. I think that's supposed to be Denise, and I just watched the thing on that. Oh, this guy. This is like transcription of DNA. And the thing is, the timing of this, or the folding of proteins, the timing, and like they showing that green thing floating up. Well, no, one has to come up at the exact time. It's bizarre how choreographed it has to be. There has to be, the computing system that's pretty powerful. Now, is making a decision an illusion? That's, to me, a secondary question. The question is, where is the decision coming from? Right? Where is it ultimately coming from? How is this decision being even made? And the answer lies with how it's going on inside a cell, because frankly, everything that multicellular creatures do, you see in cellular creatures. So, yeah.